Welcome to another episode of the Rich Woman Rising podcast. I'm your host, Eloise Tompkins, and I'm a money mindset coach and psychologist and love helping women shift their relationship with money so that they can not only make more of it, but to enjoy the fact that they have money without feeling guilt, overwhelm, and all of those uncomfortable emotions that we feel. And you might have noticed on the podcast that I've had a few guests on the show. And today we have an incredible guest who I think I say this for every single guest, but I truly mean it from the bottom of my heart with every single guest. I have Dani Zetzer on the show, who is a lawyer, not just a lawyer, an absolutely fucking brilliant lawyer who I have so much respect for. And I'm going to hand over to Dani because I think that she can introduce herself way better than I will ever be able to. So, Dani, welcome to the show. And can you tell us a bit about who you are and your absolute brilliance?
I don't
No
know.
pressure.
Well, yes, I'm a lawyer. I only do family law, and that's all that I've ever done. So that's my special niche because it comes from a real passion to help families navigate separation and to try and maintain or restore relationships rather than destroy them through the court system. And I've been running my own law firm for a number of years, which has come with a lot of lessons and trials and tribulations, of course, but I'm also really proud of it, proud of the culture that I've created in my firm, and proud of having somewhere that I enjoy coming to every day. And then more recently, I've really branched out into media, talking about women in business, women empowerment, money when it comes to women in business and our approach to money. And that's taken me on a wild adventure. And part of that is my podcast, Diary of a Divorce Lawyer, which I'm really enjoying. So, yeah, so my day is really mixed and varied. There's some, court work, legal work, and on the other side, there's, the media side, which is more fun and creative, but I get different things from both of them.
Gosh, I love that so much. And, I love the varied nature of the work that you get to do because and I think that's one of the perks about running your own business is that you get to
Really.
make choices about what you want to do, but
Yeah.
I also know that it wasn't always this way for you.
Yeah.
And I also know, and I'd love you to share a bit about how you got into the family law, because I know that, like you said, that comes from a really personal place and
Yeah.
has a lot of there's a lot of personal context as to why you got into that space. Can you share a little bit about that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. Like both my parents are immigrants to this country, and they met when they were teenagers, and they separated in their late 20s, very young, after having three kids together. And it was, unusual circumstances because the sheriff came and repossessed our home, and my mum wasn't aware of really the financial strife that we were in. And my dad was really ashamed, like, he wanted to protect her from that.
Mm.
He, I suppose, was a little bit in denial as well. But what ended up happening is we were really left homeless, and we had a couple of years where we moved around a lot. So we moved 11 times in 2 years. My mum had no education. She dropped out of school in year 10, no real skills to go make a living. And
Mm.
she had three very young children to support. So we were 7, 5, and 2. And so she really started to lean on me, which is very normal and natural
Mm.
when you go through a separation, for the vulnerable parent to lean on the eldest child is really
Mm.
quite common. And I felt that, like I felt like I really had a responsibility to help mum and to do whatever I could. But I also felt really resentful that no one was looking out for my needs. Like I
Mm.
really thought, well, hang on, where's my lawyer? And so I really, from a very young age, was very motivated to be a lawyer and to help families to do this differently if I could. And and I was very determined. And I was the first woman in my family to finish school, let alone go on to university and get a law degree. So that, yeah, I think that's brought a lot of pride to my parents, which is really nice, and a lot of healing through the work that I do. They're now on really good terms and help each other out. And it only took 30 years, but I'm proud of us as a family.
Years. Wow, gosh. Oh, that's so tough, Dani, and I think uh, it's interesting, isn't it? Well, I find it interesting how so much of who we become as an adult is really those early life experiences that we had. And so much of what you share, I'm sure so many people listening will relate to. I can relate to, like, studying psychology. I mean, I was always fascinated by people's behavior, particularly my family, particularly my mother, where she would behave in particular ways. And I'm like, why are you doing that? Like, that's not the social norm. That's not, why are you so special? Why do you think you're so special? And that led me to really become curious about people, which
Mm,
ultimately led to studying psychology. So there's a lot of foundation of our childhood that leads to what we choose to do as an adult. And I know that you help so many families have in the best possible way, have the best divorce
mm,
or separation for their family to prevent them going into the courts, which is just amazing. And not only that, like, you've come from a childhood where there has been homelessness, where there has
mm,
been a lot of financial instability,
mm.
and where there has been moments of like not having enough.
There was a huge amount of fear growing up. So I think it was, on two levels. First of all, as immigrants,
Mm,
like my mum was always suspicious, like
mm,
when she got social security, like money from Centrelink, like, is there a
mm,
catch to this? Like, you know, there was that fear mentality, not understanding the documents so well, and then on the other side, in terms of like losing the roof over your head, and just always feeling like someone was coming to get her. She always felt like
mm,
would never be able to cope. And so there was always a fear of like just not having enough to make ends meet, not being able to pay the bills. And I think to a large extent, that still, plagues her a little bit. And I kind of had to break loose of that. I was definitely in that same cycle for a very long time.
mm.
And I did a lot of reading on fear. And I kind of, the best way I can describe it is like the Nike slogan, which I think is amazing. It's magic, just do it. Because there is magic in feeling the fear, and the fear is so real that you think you're going to die. I mean, it's
Mm.
right. And then just doing it anyway. And that really is how I've managed to kind of break the cycle.
How
Um,
did you do that? Because I mean, I find that a lot of women, particularly the women that I work with, um, have this sense of like they know that there's something blocking them. There's this sense that it is fear. And yet the emotion of fear, it actually prevents us from taking action.
mm,
And
mm.
so I actually have a massive issue with feel the fear and do it anyway as a slogan. So I guess I'm curious, like, how did you get to that point of just
Well,
do it?
a lot of therapy, but I started small, right?
Mm,
So it was, the small risks that really, you know, I started small.
mm,
My worst case scenario didn't eventuate. Or sometimes it did, but I was still
mm,
okay. Uh, and sometimes that's led to huge mistakes that I regret. So
mm,
you know, it's not all a bed of roses, right? But I think that's part of the journey. And I think, I'm a huge fan of podcasts, and every entrepreneur that I've ever listened to on a podcast has had major failures.
mm.
Major. And that's the only way they've succeeded, because they've learnt much more from their failures than their successes.
What
Um,
do you attribute, like, because, and I know, and we're going to get to this in a little bit, but
mm,
I know that there have been, and I don't know whether you would call this a failure or how you would describe it, but I guess what I'm wondering is like, how do you navigate that, like those failures, those moments where you're like, I have fucked up so bad, and I don't
yeah.
know how I'm going to recover from that, because I guess what I'm thinking from that is linking that in with fear. And like fear is such a strong body reaction that you feel like it's a visceral reaction.
Mm.
And so, how do you then navigate that? How do you tolerate that fear so that you can keep putting one foot in front of the other?
I can think of like three kind of instances in my career path where I've had that fear that, just where like it's just this weight of pressure in your chest where you feel like you just can't go on, right?
Mm,
And
mm,
so the three times that that's happened, I'm happy to share openly. The first time was when I was fired from a legal job that really meant a lot to me, and I just thought, I'm never going to make it. From that, I started my own law firm.
mm,
The second time was when I split with my business partner from family law life. Like, she's the most beautiful person, right? So I thought, if I can't make business partnership work with this person,
mm,
I'm a failure. How am I going to do this? Then I started Respect Legal, which has been, a big success. And the third time was when during COVID, I have ADHD and I get bored easily. I decided to teach myself share trading and crypto trading, and I loved it. And I did it for 2.5 years very successfully. And I grew my investment to 5.5 million US dollars, which is insane to even think of. And on one terrible earlier last year, I lost all of it, along with hundreds of thousands of people. It was a very bad day in the market, but I thought I was safe. I didn't think I had over leveraged, but I actually did over leverage and did make the huge mistake of putting it all in, right? Which I would never do again. And all three examples, when they happened, I felt like this was the end of the world.
mm,
I felt like I was going to die, that there was no future for me, that I was done. There was a cold sweat all over my body, that
mm,
panic and fear of like, how are you going to take your next step, right?
mm,
And I think, and we've spoken about this, I think the key with any kind of healing from anything is to take radical responsibility for your part in it.
mm,
And with all three things, I had to really take responsibility for the part I played. I think the second part is like really sitting in the discomfort of the fear and not trying to avoid it. You know,
mm,
the dopamine hits, alcohol, drugs, what you name it, right? And just sit in it,
mm,
which was very difficult. And then the third part, which is, I suppose, we've spoken about this, that I'm kind of still on that journey, is okay, well, let's take those learnings and make something good out of it.
mm,
Um, and so I can see now how, losing my employment led to me starting my own firm. Losing
mm,
the business partnership led to Respect Legal. I don't know where losing 5.5 million US dollars is going to lead to next, but I do have faith because I've seen it from my life experience that my failures have led to successes from and but from learning from them. So if you just put your head in the sand and say, well,
mm,
oh, it wasn't my fault, it was a bad market day, then I would have gone on to lose more, right? But we've got to face it and really take responsibility and learn from it. And so
mm,
I feel good about where I'm at, and I actually was able to let go of those losses very, very quickly. And I think that is from faith, and I don't mean that in a religious way at all, because I'm not religious, but I believe in myself. I believe that I am capable and that I have the skills to rebuild from any rock bottom. And that's taken time to cultivate, you know. Um, and I think being in my 40s now, it's much, much easier. Yeah.
I love that so much. And I'm just wondering how listeners are experiencing hearing that, because I mean, I've heard your stories before,
Mm.
and I'm aware that not everybody who's listening has. And the idea of $5.5 million and then opening that account up and like, I don't know what was on the screen, whether it was just a lower number or zeros.
Zero.
Yeah. Like that is just wild,
Yeah.
like to feel like you're on top of the world financially, to
Yeah.
then,
I didn't though. I didn't feel on top of the world, and that was the problem.
mm,
I felt guilty about having that kind of money and having achieved it easily. And I kept saying, there's people working in factories earning $5 a day, and I've just made all this money sitting in my bed on my laptop. It's not fair. I felt ashamed.
mm,
I felt like dirty, is how I would describe
mm,
it. And the mission for the money was to go into a charity that I'm deeply passionate about establishing, right?
mm,
And I think I will get there, but a different way. But because I wasn't comfortable with that wealth, and I never withdrew, I never touched any of it, I never
mm,
splurged and went and bought a handbag, nothing, right?
mm,
Which shows you I was so uncomfortable with it.
mm,
And so that's the learning that I take from this loss. Not that I was silly and that I put too much in or that I thought I was an expert in something and I shouldn't have been. That's
mm,
all kind of, shame and the shame spiral, which is not helpful. The learning I take from it is, why didn't I feel like I had earned it? Why didn't I feel proud of earning it?
mm,
And I think most men would have felt proud of it. They would have been bragging about it. I
mm,
certainly wasn't bragging about it. No one in my life would have known, really. I kept it to myself.
mm,
Um, and why was I ashamed of it? Like it would keep me up at night.
mm,
And so that's the work I've been doing since that loss. And I haven't traded since, but not because I'm scared, but because I know that unless I break that pattern and learn to
mm,
be proud of accumulating wealth and not attach shame to it, it's going to happen
mm.
again.
Yep, because we repeat those patterns, and that insight that you have into your relationship with money is so powerful because you can, and I think taking away those learnings from it and taking that information and data
Mm.
and having a bit of neutrality, I hope I said that right,
Yeah.
towards money, so that you can kind of go, okay, well, and there was a lot of emotion attached to that money. And
A lot. None
yeah,
of it good.
no, and well, I mean, I don't see emotions as good or bad, rather information. It
Mm.
was giving you information about that relationship with that 5.5 million.
Yeah.
And that information that it was giving you was, I don't like how this money came into, it felt too, I don't want to say easy, but I'm trying to think of like a better word. Maybe you have a better word,
No,
but
I slept probably 3 hours a night for 2.5 years.
mm,
You know what I mean? Like there was nothing easy about it, but it was this shame that there's, so many
mm.
women struggling to make enough to pay rent. And there was all this money just sitting there to the
So what would
point.
be different if you then make money in a different way instead of investing? Like how will that shift for you?
So I don't think it was the way I made it. I think it's old stuff from childhood where, that saying, the filthy rich,
Mm,
because we were in struggle town. When we
mm,
saw people who were wealthy and seemed like they were having such an easy life, which of course is never true, you know,
mm,
we
mm.
were, we were taught, oh, they're filthy rich, filthy rich. You see, like
Yeah.
that connection, like, and that's how I felt. I felt dirty and I felt
Mm,
ashamed because yeah, it's like we wore a badge of honor that we were struggling and that
mm,
these people over there, they don't know how hard life really is. But of course they do. They have all the same pains and struggles that everyone else does.
mm-hmm. It's interesting because like I've read Paris Hilton's memoir. I bring up Paris Hilton and her memoir a lot. Like I love it. And I really like Paris Hilton. And it's interesting because I mean, you talk about filthy rich, and people would probably say that about her because she and her family have oodles of money. Like, I don't even know how much they're worth. Multiple, I don't know whether they're billions, but they've got like multiple millions of dollars, like hundreds of millions of dollars. And I read her memoir, and it talked about how when Paris was a teenager, she went to her parents, undiagnosed ADHD. Her parents sent her to some school for troubled youth, but for the rich. Like, so it was a meant to be like some upmarket facility where she was then not cared for 2 years. And there was a lot of horrible things that were done to her. And yet she has money. And when she left that place, she said to her grandfather, I want to make $100 million. And he was just like, okay, cool. Not laughing at her, not saying, like, if I said that to my dad, he would like be like, yeah,
Yeah.
right. Um, but to him, it was just normal. But to Paris, it was a way for her to feel safe and in control. And even so, it doesn't matter about how much money, because her perception of wealth, like $100 million, was achievable, but also, I don't want to say nothing, like, but it was achievable. Whereas
Mhm.
to people who don't come from that level of wealth would find that really wild. Like, even me thinking about it, and money mindset, but still kind of think, oh, $100 million, like, wow, that feels like a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I guess I don't know where I was going with that point, but
I think, yeah, it doesn't take away the pain that she experienced and what she
yeah,
suffered, right? But
100%.
also, I mean, it's achievable for any of us, $100
Yeah.
million, but it's also okay to not want that.
Mm,
We don't all need to want $100 million, right?
mm,
And sometimes, and not always, there are sacrifices to be made to make that kind of money. Not
mm,
always, right? And so I think I think the world would be a tricky place if we all wanted to earn $100 million at any expense.
mm,
I think it's also really okay to find joy and pleasure in the smaller things in life and not needing a magic sum that's going
mm.
to bring you some sort of happiness. I mean, it's clear
Well, it doesn't.
with her, it's clear that it hasn't. She's had all the trials and tribulations that any of us have had, right? And I
And
didn't think
that's the
we'd be
thing, like,
talking about Paris Hilton, but I kind of love it.
yeah, I love Paris, but
Yeah.
you're right. And that's the thing, like, it doesn't matter about the money. It doesn't matter how much money you have. You're right. We're all human. We all have our own experiences. Whether you're homeless or whether you have hundreds of millions of dollars, that worth comes from within.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, I guess, when I see Paris Hilton, like, she struggled with her self-worth, and money has resolved that for her. And so that's where I get really passionate about wanting to help women with their self-worth and separate it from money and success and achievement. And I guess that was something that you kind of spoke of a little bit before, around increasing your self-worth. How
Yeah.
has that kind of helped navigate some of these uh, experiences that you've had with money to build a business that is really, really, in my eyes, successful?
I think, I was raised by Holocaust survivors, my grandparents, and my grandmother always taught me that no one is above or beneath you, right? So,
Mm,
like, the Holocaust was based on the concept that, people needed to be eradicated because they were
mm,
beneath another race, right? And so she always taught me, and it's a bit vulgar and it sounds different in Yiddish, but she said, everyone goes to the toilet the same way.
mm,
All human, right? And so she taught me to speak to the person that collects your garbage the same way as I would speak to a Supreme Court judge.
mm,
And so when I have had the opportunity to go speak to the Chief Justice of Australia, I don't feel nervous because I remember they're human just like
mm,
me. They're not better than me.
mm,
I'm not better than them, right? And so that has really helped with my confidence. But also, and I know you don't like it, but the first time I went into a courtroom, I ran to the bathroom and spewed before I went into the courtroom. I
mm,
still did it. I didn't stay in the toilet cubicle and say, I can't do this and stay on the floor, you know. And even if I did do that, the next time I would try again.
mm,
I don't know where that came from. I think it's from, like being raised by very resilient people. But the
mm,
the concept is it's okay to feel all those feelings, including fear,
mm, mm,
not to stop you from doing something that you want to do. If you don't want to do it and it's not aligned with you,
mm,
your body telling you, don't do this. But I wanted to stand before, the Chief Justice of Australia and make arguments on behalf of my client. I wanted to do that. And yes, I spewed before because I was petrified. And then I did it, and maybe I didn't do it as eloquently as I would now, but I did it. And so, and all that practice has led to, I can do it, I can do it very easily now. So I think confidence is not something that you wake up and get. It takes practice, and absolutely there are more confident personality types than others, of course, right? But practice is a big part of it. I'm not naturally an extrovert. It takes me a long time to recharge, and I do that by being alone. Alone time is very important to me. Whereas a natural extrovert, goes to an event and they're just like, their bucket is filled by that energy. Mine is totally depleted.
I don't understand extroverts and like getting, I'm just like, I don't get it. I was going to say, I wish I did, but I don't.
People make that mistake of like assuming that a confident person is just extroverted and it's said of me often, but the confidence is a learnt skill, I really do think. And I think it helps if you're passionate about the subject matter, that's going to be a more important driver than your fear. So if you can find something that is more important to you than the fear, then you're onto something. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but it's going to be easier, right?
And I love that so much. Like my reflections from what you've just said is that, well, there's a few. One is that I guess like I'm thinking of you in the bathroom stall and like, I mean, I don't want to think of the spewing part because ill, but what I kind of take from that is I'm feeling really uncomfortable and this fear is giving me information. And I'm using this information to say, yes, I'm fearful. Yes, I'm scared. I'm terrified. And because I'm feeling this emotion, I still have choice. I still can make a decision on whether I want to get hooked into my feelings, whether I want to get hooked on my thoughts, whether I want to, what do I want to do with this data that I'm collecting from my body? And I think that there's real power in that. And for people listening, I would really encourage you to think about, are you able to understand the cues that your body is giving you and be able to interpret it? Because sometimes that can be really, really tricky when
there's totally different types of fear, right? I don't want someone who's in a DV situation in the bathroom spewing to then get the courage to go back out there and sleep with the guy, right? That fear is telling you danger and you need to run. This fear was telling me, wow, you really care about this. You want to do a really good job and this is really important to you. And so you're a bit scared, So yeah, it's learning to really understand the difference between those two types of fears as well, right? And I think way too often as women, we're taught to shut down our feelings, right? When we're little kids and we're told to give Uncle Johnny a hug and we're uncomfortable. No, don't be rude. Go give him a hug, right? And so we learn to really ignore our cues. And so to then tap back into your cues and be really honest and open with yourself about what they mean. Me, the only way I'm able to do this, I'll just speak for myself, is to sit in it, to sit in the discomfort of the feeling. If I try and avoid it, it leads down a very bad path for me because that's where I lead to addictions, overworking, avoiding my basic needs. Really comes back down to me, okay, well, what is this that I'm feeling and what does it mean? And
I love that example, Dani, as well. And that's such a good point of what does it mean and how am I interpreting it? And again, I don't like when people say, oh, just listen to your gut because your gut's always right. If it tells you no, then listen to that. And I'm like, well, hang on a minute. No, your gut will not even your gut, your body will find situations and experiences that feel familiar. Hence what you were saying about that DV domestic violence, sorry, using shorthand situation,
Yeah.
that a woman might want to go back into. Oh, I want to go back and sleep with this abusive partner because it feels really familiar to my body, even though, like, rationally, I get that it's a bad idea. It feels really familiar. And so listening to your gut in that situation, might not be the wisest choice. And so that's where being able to discern, okay, what is it telling me? And do I want to listen to it? Which is where I love your example again, going back into the bathroom, where it's kind of like, okay, what is this information telling me? Yes, I'm fearful. And okay, it's also because I want to make an impact versus, yes, I'm fearful. And this is actually a legitimately dangerous
Yeah.
situation that I'm going to be exposed to. So that's a really wonderful point to raise, because I think that's something that, I'm really big on, and I want to teach and instill in people, because just blindly following our body or our mind without tuning into it can lead to some, like you said, really destructive behaviors. For me, it was food and also undiagnosed ADHD and dopamine. But, so we do kind of then find other ways that help us cope in those moments when, if we can lean into that discomfort, it doesn't feel good. Like, oh my gosh, it doesn't
Yeah.
feel great. And it's also where the power lies. And I guess I'm curious, because you've now got this business, Respect Legal, which has, gosh, when I visited your office, I don't even remember how many offices we walked past, and the team that you have created and the culture that you've created. How has doing this work, doing the therapy, doing the coaching, tuning into your body and leaning into discomfort, how has that enabled you to create the business that you have created today?
I think it's by going through the things that I've gone through in my life has definitely made me a better leader. I think when I started out, I was more influenced by fear. So I came across, I think, as controlling, as micromanaging. This is 8 to 10 years ago.
Mm,
And so I've had to learn and evolve over time. And some of my team are still with me from those days, and they've seen the change in me. So I think, you need to be constantly open to learning
mm,
and show vulnerability with your team. And so that doesn't mean trauma dumping onto your team, right? But they've been with me through a marriage breakdown. They've been with me, business split breakdown, the loss of all that money. They've
mm,
been there with me, right? And taking them on that journey with me means they're willing to open up and let me share their journey.
mm.
And that's a real privilege. And so we really are very, very supportive of one another. And we have like 80% dropout in the first 2 years, family lawyers, because it's very, very hard work,
Mm,
very draining. It's look, you're going through one of the hardest times of people's lives with them.
mm,
They're not themselves, Sometimes they're really, really struggling and they're relying
mm,
on you. So it's not an easy job. And so what we've done is create a culture where we can rely on one another and support one another,
mm,
to withstand the work in a way and also enjoy the work, which at one point in my career, I thought that wouldn't be possible. So at
yeah.
this stage now, we're really aware of when someone's struggling and we kind of pick up the slack or, give support. And then there's the money factor, right, in business, because we're all about care and holistic support for a client. And that can make it difficult to, to make money, right? So at the moment, we have 6 matters in court out of 150. We would probably make more money if we, instead of having 150 clients, we just had 30 or 40 clients in court. That's it,
Mm,
right? That's an easier model, isn't it? You're just dealing with 30 or 40 people, charging them a fortune. Instead, we've
mm,
got this other model where we've got 150 clients to service, and then we're charging them a lot less per person, right?
mm,
But the reality is, I couldn't sleep at night doing it the other way.
mm.
And so when you are doing something that is aligned with your values and you're proud of the work that you do, I do believe the money comes. Like we really don't have to, I've never had to panic about where is the next client coming from.
Mm,
Um, it's something that people talk about a lot. Where do you get your clients, like networking, things like that. I do all those things for enjoyment, but more for community. I love
mm,
speaking to other business owners, but I've
mm,
never had to think, crap, we don't have enough work. That might be the nature of the work, being recession proof, but I'd like to think it's because we're so aligned with our values.
mm,
And that comes through with everything that we do, that most of our work is coming from happy clients referring their friends.
mm. And I love that. And it's kind of that idea that you can have a successful business that doesn't look like everyone else's, that
Yeah.
is financially viable, that is financially successful,
Mm.
where you feel good about going into work because it's aligned with who you are as a person, the values that you
Mm.
have. And it didn't exist prior to you, right? So
Mm.
you created it. You're like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to shake things up a little and I'm going to create the thing that I wish I had when
Yeah.
I was a kid to support my mum and my family. And I'm also going to create something that is different so that nobody else will kind of be doing that same thing.
That word is interesting, different, because I
Mm,
think there's a real trend now, like any kind of business coach you go to, any
mm,
marketing course you do, it's all about, okay, well, you've got to set yourself apart as different.
yeah.
And a lot of people say they're different. And then I ask them why. How are you different? And they can't actually articulate it, right? Um, and so I think if you're trying to be different for the sake of being different,
Mm,
well, don't bother.
mm,
You know, work out what drives you, and then it'll come naturally to you, right? Because I don't
mm,
know, you've read the books about the different zones. We've got the zone of excellence or the zone of genius.
mm,
Sometimes we're stuck in the zone of excellence. We do a job really well. That's all we've ever known to do. And so we may as well keep doing it. And the zone
mm,
of genius is right there. And I think the key to getting to that is actually just pursuing what drives you.
mm,
And I think the success comes from that. And then it's so easy to articulate how you're different.
mm-hmm.
It just comes
I
so
love that.
naturally.
You've got so much wisdom, Dani. Like you have, and I know like when we talk outside of the podcast and just in general, like there's always nuggets when we talk, because you're right. And I'm like, as you were speaking, I'm like, what's my difference? What's my, the word that comes to mind is the unique selling point. And yeah, it got me thinking, I'm like, what is it for me? And I'm like, you know what? It's the body. It's being able to connect in with our relationship with money and through our body. Because
Mm.
as women, we're so disconnected from that. And what I ultimately want is to help women bring the body into the picture because we're
Mm.
so head heavy and we're so rational and logic driven. And we'll go and do the next shiny implementation of a business strategy or read the book, but we don't actually lean into that discomfort. We don't actually feel. And I know for me, that was when I lent into my feelings and kind of understood how to discern my feelings and how to make sense of what was going on in my inner world. That was where the magic happened for my business, for my life, for my sexuality, for my friendships, for my whole life. And that's what I want for other women. And I truly believe that if we can connect in with ourselves and really get to know ourselves, not from this perspective of what do other people want from me, but what do I want? Like for you, for example, I want a business where I make an impact. And sure, money is great. And I want to drive a nice car and have a successful business. And I don't want to do it in the way that, I'm going to send 40 clients to court, even though that's going to be the faster way for me to get to
Yeah.
millions. I want to do it my way. So,
Well,
and you,
for me, it started with I wanted to be able to get the toilet fixed if I needed to.
yeah.
I wanted to be able to get my kids, the best cream or medicine without worrying about the money. It started
Yeah.
with small things, right? And I think, what sets you apart absolutely is, okay, well, what are the feelings that are stopping you from getting there? Not about, I can teach you how to have an abundance mindset and get the Ferrari and get the shiny house, right? You're not about that. And it's always come back to feelings with me. Even yesterday, I had like this like anger inside of me yesterday
Mm,
afternoon. And I think we're always taught, to just shut that down. And
mm,
instead, I've taught myself, well, let's explore this. And I managed to take 15 minutes aside for myself as a single mum of three kids.
mm,
And I listened to a meditation about anger. And I started to realize, oh, it's not anger, it's overwhelm, right?
mm,
And so then I'm getting more and more irritable. I'm overwhelmed. What am I overwhelmed about? And I start chasing it. And I often journal, right, while I'm
mm.
chasing these thoughts to
Yeah.
work out where the feeling's coming from. And I worked out, okay, I'm really overwhelmed with, the admin around my media commitments. So this
Mm,
morning I reached out to someone that I know is an expert in this area and said, do you think you could help me?
mm.
And now I feel great. If I had just said, oh, I'm an angry bitch today, must be the perimenopause, I'll take some estrogen tonight,
Yeah.
right? If I had shamed myself like that and not listened
Yeah.
and followed the feeling, I'd still be feeling the same way today.
Hmm.
Um, so
I love
yeah, I
that
think
so much.
yeah,
I love that. And I love, yeah, like, I don't know, you're speaking my language, Dani, and, like, it's powerful in journaling, like that's why I've got the Millionaire Mindset Academy, which helps women shift those emotions around their relationship with money. And one of the things that we do in there is money diaries, which is a journal prompt, but it's not just a journal prompt. It helps you to unpack unpack those subconscious, like kind of
yeah,
what you did with the anger. Well, what is it? What's actually going on? Why am I feeling this way? What's actually happening for me? Why am I thinking this way? And being able to unpack that kind of what we're consciously aware of. Because what I'm hearing with you there was that sense of, oh, I'm consciously aware that I'm angry. I'm noticing
yeah,
something.
yeah,
And that's only the 5% tip of the iceberg. And when you kind of dig deeper, it's like, well, actually, there's other stuff going on that we're not aware of until we slow it down. And that's another thing that I love doing. And I have a lot of fun slowing things down actually with people. Because they're like, oh my gosh, I've never thought about it in this way before. I'm like, we don't, because we don't often take this time to slow ourselves down and to take that 15 minutes as a single mum working in this your own business, doing all of these media commitments. We don't take that 15 minutes for ourselves, but gosh, when we do, look at the outcome that you can have from that. I love that. And I guess on that note, Dani, like thinking about some of the things that we have spoken about today, like there's so many gems that I'm hearing in there. And I'm wondering if you have any tips and I know you've kind of interweaved them throughout, but any parting words of wisdom.
well, specifically when it comes to money, which is what we're talking about today,
Mm,
I think the biggest thing that's led me to the success, that I have at the moment is letting go of good for the potential of great.
mm,
It's the same as the zone of excellence versus the zone of genius. And because when we start in any business, we really want to hold on to every client. We want to say yes to every client. We're scared
mm,
as the next client is going to come from. And it's only when you really let go of, you know, something that's okay that you can really welcome in something great. And
mm,
again, the only thing that's stopping us there is fear. So I
mm,
say, try it. Try saying no to the client that wants your service that is just not right. You've just got this feeling like they're
mm,
so difficult with the onboarding process that you just know the next few months is going to be a nightmare. Try saying no.
mm,
I mean, I almost guarantee in the next week or two, you'll get a much better client that's much more appropriate. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. And so, like, a little thing that I do is, if I feel like, oh, we need some new work, I will archive, matters that, where we haven't heard from the client in a little bit.
Mm.
It's clearing that energy and letting go of some
I
good
love that. I
or
love
okay.
clearing the energy.
You
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
funny you say that because my coach will you say that to me. She's like, Ellie, how's your energy at the moment? I'm like, and then I have a little huff because she's right. And I'm like, oh, fine. Yes. Okay. Thank you for the reminder. Have my little huff. And I'm like, okay. Yep. All right. I hear what you're saying because it's true. And it's interesting. Like, it's so interesting how we attract in what we're putting out. And
Yeah, it's a mirror. Everything's a mirror.
it really is. And it's hard sometimes. And I think this can be really tricky is to reflect out or be that mirror out, or I don't know what the word is that I'm looking for, and to attract in when we're struggling with that internally ourselves. For example, like
Yeah.
if you are starting your business and it's new and you like, because I think back to when I first started my business and I definitely had that I should have said no client. And I look back and I'm like, oh my God, that was just a lot. And but then I think back, why did I take that client? Well, because new business, I needed that validation in a way, like, okay, I have a business, I have a client, woohoo. And it can be tricky to say no when you do operate from well, if I
Which
say
is
no,
fine.
like
It's
it's
fine. You've just got to take responsibility that you
yeah,
knew this wasn't the right client for you and you took it on
yeah,
because you needed some validation. That's okay.
yeah.
But why don't you deserve the great client? And
Mm,
is there someone out there that can service the great client better than you? Wouldn't they be
mm,
better for having you? So it's
mm,
like, it's a worthiness piece, right? And so all
100%.
I'm saying is try it once and see where it leads. Turn down one client, turn down one opportunity, and just see if something better comes along as a result of letting that
I
go.
love that. And I just want to add to that, like if you do that, send either Dani or I a DM because I'm going to pop
Yeah,
Dani's
I'm
details in and I know Dani's DMs are always open. Does she always reply? No, but that's a different story.
sorry.
I send Dani
I'm
a
gonna,
DM
I'm gonna
sometimes
get
and I'm
help.
like, Dani, hello. But send us a DM because we would love to hear. I would love to hear, like if you
Yeah.
do have a go at saying no, let us know. We'll cheer you on. We'll be, and I did that with Dani actually. I did that with you earlier this year,
Yes, you
where
did.
I
That's
saw Dani
right.
speak, and I can't remember what you were talking about now,
I
but it
offered you
made me
something. Yeah.
yeah, and I was like, oh, I need to let go of a friend, and I mean, it was in part what you said, in part the universe, in part just a lot of other signs that I needed to let go, and then I did, and I messaged Dani because I was like, oh, I just need to be witnessed in that experience. So if
Mm.
you do say no to a client that doesn't align and you want to be witnessed in that, send us a DM. I would love to hear that experience. Give us some context that you've listened to the podcast though, because I will forget ADHD brain over here. So just give us a little bit of context. But let us know because I think just being witnessed sometimes can also be really, really valuable. But Dani, oh my goodness, I feel like I could just keep talking to you because there's so many wisdoms and learnings that you articulate so well for people. And I'm sure that there's so many nuggets that women will have walked away from this episode gleaning, and just hearing your story of and relating to childhood and kind of coming from nothing in a sense to building this really successful 7-figure plus business is inspirational for many. And also not holding on to and attaching your self-worth to money is really cool as well. And I just or I guess want to invite, if anybody is looking for a lawyer or is looking to pass details of a separation lawyer on or family divorce lawyer on, where can they find you?
Oh, we're just Google Respect Legal. We're pretty hard to miss.
You are
We're
pretty
in
hard
Melbourne,
to
Sydney, but we can service. Luckily, we have a national legal system, so we can see anyone.
Amazing. I'll pop your details in the show notes for people as well. But thank you so much, Dani, for joining us on the show.
Mhm.
And for everyone else, thank you so much for tuning in and sharing your time with us today. Can't wait to chat with you all again next week. So keep an eye out for future episodes. And yeah, check out the show notes for all of the links and resources that we were talking about today.